everybody. My name is Miriam. Today I'm going to be responding to Mark's claim, which is society's view of child-free people who choose to be child-free. After reading a little bit on his outline and hearing his speech last time, I think what he was trying to state is that people who don't have children are happier than people with children. Some of his secondary claims are that child-free people are labeled as selfish, and that some claims say child-free people just want to be rich, and child-free people are assumed to have miserable lives. So in his first claim, he said child-free people are labeled as selfish. Mark mentioned that if being child-free means you're selfish, then logically it means you don't care about your friends or family either. Now, he mentions this because according to his study, he found that having a child could be considered selfish. Honestly, I don't feel that this is a claim. He gives no evidence, nor is there any evidence I could find online on this. But the only thing closest to that claim that I could find is that parents experience greater levels of happiness and meaning in life than people without children. According to researchers in University of California, Riverside, and the University of British Columbia and Stanford University, parents are also a lot happier during the day when they are caring for their children as opposed to when they're just doing other daily activities. The researchers found in a series of studies conducted in the United States of Canada. Now, this shows if parents are happier when caring for a child, how is that considered being selfish? Another claim that he mentioned is that he said that child-free people just want to be rich. Mark mentions that with the U.S. economy nowadays, it's hard to be sustaining even without children, expenses such as food, clothes, diapers. The only evidence and statistic that he gives is that it costs approximately $200,000 to raise a child. The problem with this statistic is that it doesn't apply to everyone and the word approximately. According to the USDA report published in August, it is by far cheaper to raise kids in the South or Midwest than the West or Northeast, and rural areas are by far the cheapest. While it costs around $17,810 annually for a Northeastern middle-income family to spend on a child, the cost is just $11,715 for a rural family. So you see, the USDA, the same one that stated it would cost $200,000 to raise a child, also mentions it depends where you are located and how much you make and how you spend it. So really, that is why they use the word approximately. Now, another thing that I found is that according to the IRS, you are already entitled to an exemption if you have a child, which works very much like a deduction, that is. It reduces your taxable income, in this case by $4,000 for 2015, $4,050 for 2016, and you get an extra one for each child you care for, so have a lot of children. I'm just kidding. So another claim that he mentions, which is the last claim, is that child-free people are assumed to have miserable lives. Mark mentions that they found out that parents are more likely to be depressed compared to their child-free counterpart. The child-free groups were even happier than the empty nester groups. Again, he gives no studies or no facts to go by this. The one that I was able to find is that Robin Hadley at Keele University surveyed 125 men and women who already had children, find that whether they wanted more. He found that 59% of mothers wanted more children compared to 55% of fathers. He said that women who wanted more children, when they thought about not being able to have them, had higher levels of anger, depression, guilt, isolation, sadness, and yearning. So in essence, depression can come for so many reasons with or without children. Another thing that I found is that Taiwan's Mental Health Foundation claims that children may even keep their parents sane while well beyond their years. The organization recently interviewed 1,084 randomly selected senior citizens and found that seniors with no children scored 6.4 points lower on a mental health questionnaire than elderly subjects with children. Now, the results show that people who have children are happier and have greater satisfaction and emotional well-being than those without children. So you see, there are no perfect parents and there are no perfect children, but there are plenty of perfect moments along the way. Thank you.
All right, well, Miriam, you kind of had to interpret and summarize what the inference was of the advocate's argument. You created a structure based around kind of the negative reverse claims that the advocate was making as to why they didn't fit in these particular categories. It always makes it awkward when you're kind of working a little bit backwards on an argument. And I thought that you did a pretty good job trying to summarize what the issues were that the advocate was talking about. On the selfishness issue, the advocate kind of conflates, well, having children is also selfish, and you kind of try to respond to that. It feels a little bit like you're responding to the preemptive argument rather than the argument itself and whether or not having children is something that is beneficial to society. Does it provide a utilitarian effect, something like that? So I kind of think that you missed the big picture claim here in looking at the argument that he's using to kind of rebut what the potential answer is. In a little bit, what happens is you kind of fall into a trap. You look at the issue that he's talking about and say, well, I'll just take a contrary position to that, instead of looking at the bigger picture. What does this argument actually mean? And I think that you missed that issue there. You did a little bit of that on the second point as well, but I did think that the cost issue, you had some nice data on this. You also had some good quote on that first point about how people are generally happier. There was a little bit of challenge to the advocate's lack of evidence on both of those points. On the second point, you basically suggest that the approximation issue seems to render the argument somewhat problematic. I did like the fact that you had some data that suggested it's up to a $5,000 a year difference per child, depending upon where you happen to be raising that child. The one question that I never heard answered by either side is how important is the cost issue in the decision about whether or not to have children, and that seems to me like it would be pretty important. If people continue having children and they don't seem to be worried too much about the cost, then it seems like it's not that significant an issue. If the only reason that people don't have children is because of the cost, then that would seem to feed the argument on the first point that it's really about selfishness. So I think that there's a little bit of a dilemma built in there, but I thought that you found, like I said, a good piece of information to respond to the statistical information. To me, the strongest argument that you had, it was at the end where you presented your own research that suggested that when people already have children, their desire to have more, if that gets thwarted, that's the thing that creates the problem for them. Not that they have children, but that they can't have more children. In other words, they actually are satisfied by having the kids and they want to have more, and that seems to be where the problem comes from. And then your final piece of evidence, I think you need to contrast it a little bit more to the evidence, or what you say is the lack of evidence that the advocate presented, suggests that in the long run, parents with children are happier, they score higher on mental health tests, that there's a long-term advantage there. And I did like the exit that you had. I thought that was a nice conclusion to the speech. Thank you.